Hi, I am Jerome from Fastlane. Today I would like to show you how to configure an HREAP. This video is in two parts. In the first part we're going to look at how you can locally switch with an HREAP, and in the second part we're going to look at how you can configure 802.1x on an HREAP. So you know what an HREAP is. It's an LWAP/CAPWAP access point, an 1130 or 1140, 1240 or 1250 model that is set to LWAP/CAPWAP, so it joins a controller, and it is set to a special mode which is called HREAP. HREAP standing for Hybrid Remote Edge Access Point. In that mode, the access point can do two things that a normal LWAP/CAPWAP access point cannot do. First, it can locally switch traffic, which makes logical sense. In this case, for example, you see those two users. Instead of encapsulating all the traffic it receives from those users and sending it up to the main controller, it can locally dump the traffic on the local switch here in the branch, which is pretty logical. If those users want to use those branch servers here or simply access the internet, it makes no logical sense to encapsulate their traffic, send it up to the controller before sending it back to the internet or maybe back to the branch itself. So locally switching is one big advantage of the HREAP. But it has also a second advantage, is that if it ever loses connection to its main controller, that is, this link here fails, the HREAP can turn into an sort of autonomous mode and autonomously accept new clients and also maintain current connections until it reverts back to its controller once the connection is reestablished. So in this first video, we're going to look at how you do this local switching. So how do they do it? So I'm here on the controller and I created one SSID called my SSID2. To make things interesting, I have on this controller two interfaces. One is called VLAN 11 and the other one is called VLAN 12. The aim here is to send some users to VLAN 11 and some other users to VLAN 12. Let's see. If I go to this WLAN here, to my SSID2, you can see that it's sending users to VLAN 11, which means that whichever user is going to associate to this SSID is going to be sent to that VLAN 11. As you can guess, this VLAN 11 is in a network that ends with 11, so you see it's 10, 10, 11 something. So here I have a client. It's using CSSE, and it is associated to this MySSID2. And as you can see here at the bottom, it is in VLAN 11. So in my logic of HREAP, what I want to do is to show that if I associate this client to the HREAP, it's going to be locally switched. That is to say, it's going to receive its VLAN from a setting on the HREAP and not from the controller. So on that controller here, I have a couple of access points, and one of them is going to be my HREAP. For now, it's a normal access point, and its little name is 1252A. You can see it's a normal access point in local mode. So what I'm going to do is to go to that access point and tell it that I want it to be an HREAP. I do that and click apply, and the AP is going to reboot. While it does that, I'm also going to go back to my SSID and tell the SSID that I want, in some cases, some HREAP to use a special setting for that SSID. This is in the Advanced tab, and I click HREAP Local Switching. So what I'm saying here is that HREAPs supporting this SSID may have to locally switch traffic for this SSID. Apply. In between, my HREAP is back, and as you can see here on the right, it's in HREAP mode. So in this controller, as you can see, I have a couple of access points. Only two of them are enabled. One which is in normal mode, local mode here on the right, and my HREAP here. What I want to show you is what the difference is between going to the HREAP and going to the normal access point. So before I do that, I need to configure my HREAP a little bit further. So you see that now it's an HREAP, it has an HREAP tab. I can click that tab and say that I want to support some VLANs. Native VLAN ID, that's the untagged VLAN. That is the management VLAN. That is to say the VLAN on which natively the HREAP is going to be. It's not VLAN 100 in my case. If I go to my switch here, I preset the config for you to see. I did show CDP neighbor, and you can see that my 1252A here is in interface F09, and that's VLAN 10 here. So my native VLAN for my HREAP is going to be VLAN 10. This is very important. You need to have your HREAP that has to be on the management VLAN, its management VLAN has to be untagged. So if your HREAP is in VLAN 10, the native VLAN has to be VLAN 10. Okay, I'm going to apply that first, and then the AP is going to reboot, and once it reboots, it's going to have the possibility to have its other VLANs configured. And it's back. I use time-lapse, of course, for you not to wait. So if I go back to my HREAP tab, VLAN native is 10, and I can click VLAN mapping, and you see, because I checked that box in my WLAN saying HREAP local switching, this WLAN appears here, and I can locally switch on my HREAP, this local WLAN. So you see the default VLAN is 11 because that's the interface to which I'm sending those users on that WLAN by default. So I'm going to say here, VLAN 12. There is still one thing which is missing here. If I go back to my switch, I said that my HREAP was in VLAN 10 here, but you see the mode here for that port, it's switch port mode access. So I will not be able to tag anything from the HREAP here. I will not be able to send anybody to VLAN 12 here because the AP is not on the trunk. The AP is an access port, so the access port doesn't tag anything. So if I want my HREAP to be able to tag VLAN 12 for users and locally switch traffic, then I need to change this port mode to trunk. So I'm going to conft interface F09, and I need to say two things. First one is switch ports mode trunk, but also, switch port trunk. I'm talking encapsulation.1q, and then switch port mode trunk. But also I need to tell that the native VLAN is VLAN 10. You remember as I clicked that box native VLAN 10 on the HREAP itself? So that's the management VLAN for my HREAP, so that's the untagged VLAN. So that's the one that is not, that's the native VLAN, so it's untagged. So I need to do on the switch what I did on the HREAP. So I need to say switch port trunk native VLAN is VLAN 10. So traffic for VLAN 10 will not be tagged on that link, exactly like I said on the HREAP, that traffic for VLAN 10 is native, that is to say untagged. So you see my setup. If I go back to my slide here, my HREAP is here, this port is set as a trunk. Therefore, I will be able to tag traffic coming to that port and tag it the way I want. In my case, I want to use VLAN 12. So let's see if that works. So I'm going back to my controller. I'm going to go to my HREAP first, and I'm going to disable the HREAP because I want to test the other access port, the one which is here, which is the normal access point. It's not an HREAP. I'm going back to my client. It's still associated, by the way, so you can see it's working already, but just for sanity check, I'm going to reconnect again to that SSID and just make sure I still end up in VLAN 11. I'm connecting, acquiring IP address, I'm connected, and the IP address is still in VLAN 11. So that's perfectly normal, that's what I wanted. I'm connecting to a normal access point, and my WLAN setup says that when you connect to that access point, to that SSID, on any normal access point, you should be on VLAN 11. Okay, now I'm going back to my access points. I'm going to enable my HREAP and disable the other access point, which will make sure that I will be associating via the HREAP. So if everything works well now, once I disable that access point, if I associate to my SSID2, the only AP I can associate through will be the HREAP. Oh, you see it's already done, but just for sanity check, I'm going to disconnect and reconnect. Okay, acquiring IP address, and as you can guess, I'm going to get VLAN 12. Okay, so it's perfectly working. When I'm associating through a normal access point, I'm getting to the controller, and I'm ending up on VLAN 11. When I'm associating via to the same SSID, right, via the HREAP, instead of being sent to the controller, I'm locally switched, and I get whatever VLAN I decided for that SSID on that HREAP, that is VLAN 12. What is interesting, of course, is that you can set up any VLAN depending on which HREAP you're on. So if you have like 5 branches, you can send users for the same WLAN to a different VLAN depending on which branch they are in. So users here are VLAN 12, another branch may have users being sent to VLAN 20, 30, 40 for the same SSID. So that's very flexible. So in next video, we're going to look at something more complicated, which is what happens if you lose connectivity to the controller and how the HREAP can still perform 802.1x authentication for the users in the absence on the controller.